an hour or so, we've heard a lot about how AI is transforming, and also how the model should be very accurate, etc., and the data should be right. I think what we sometimes miss is the point that the true north of getting into an AI transformation is to make a business impact. And that is what I think all the organizations are looking for. And each of the panelists that I have today are the ones who are expert in these areas in the respective sectors. They've taken a lot of organizations through multiple organizations on their journey of transformation. Hence, I thought it'd be a good idea for us to get together and maybe discuss with them as to what has been their observations on these as they've worked with different clients. So let me probably start with Rajat, who is an experienced leader on the consumer side. Rajat, as you see in the industry, in the consumer industry, typically has always had been on this data journey of being a more insight-driven organization. What are the key observations that you have on AI adoption? Because there's a lot of impact on your specific sector as you work through different organizations. What are the key impact of AI adoption that you're seeing with your clients?
So thanks, Vishesh, for asking the questions. I think hopefully you can hear me well. Yeah, I was just having some problems in the early part on the sound side. So I think obviously the consumer industry, especially from the retail perspective, there's a lot of data being generated today as consumers are buying products across various channels, whether it's e-commerce, online, modern trade, general trade, and different organizations are using different methods to capture the data. And some of the key benefits or key use cases we are seeing firstly is around personalization. A lot of focus around seeing how can we use the data that consumers are shopping across channels to personalize the offerings, personalize our marketing, etc. to them. Second is, how do you use chatbots, virtual assistants to basically drive a lot of communication with the consumers and shoppers as they reach out for help, as they reach out for information, as they reach out for to try and see what are other products or suggestions that we can look at. The third is around predictive analytics to figure out, okay, if somebody has bought these products this time, what is he or she expected to buy when they visit the website or the store next time? What are adjacencies? What you don't want to do is to be able to send to the consumers or shoppers information about what they've already bought, because there's a strong possibility that many of these categories are only bought once in 2 months, once in 3 months, once in 4 months. So if you keep sending them offers of what they've already bought, it may not be that helpful. It's more around what are some of the adjacencies, what are other customers who bought those products, what did they buy, what was their experience. So recommending suggestions around cross-sell, upsell. The other fourth point is around product development. Also learning from consumers, especially on the social media platforms, on their feedback on various conversations with the brands. What are other products that potentially could be developed? So companies are also seeing that what would normally take 18 months or 12 to 18 months to develop a new product, the product life cycle is also shrunk, and they're able to develop products faster because of a lot of the use of AI, which is helping helping better communication. And then the other part, which I think obviously Akash will talk to a lot more, is about making supply chain efficiencies, using analytics to basically say, and AI say, okay, products are available in these areas. This is where consumers are looking for products. How can I come back to them and make it easier and make sure that the product is available based on supply chain optimization through digitization and AI to be able to be available as and when they want it in whichever channel.
Sure. I think fair points, because looking at the exponential growth that we have had in retail and the data, it's nice to see that a lot of organizations are looking at leveraging AI to be a differentiator. Thanks for that input. And now, Akash, when I look at manufacturing traditionally has not been the early adopters of AI as some other sectors. But of late, with the advent of IoT devices, large computing power, things have changed monumentally in this sector. So what are the trends that you are seeing in your sector when it comes to AI adoption?
Thanks, Vishesh, for the opportunity. I think from the India manufacturing sector, obviously it's about 20% of our GDP. In terms of scale and size, we are as big as any of the big economies in the world. That having said, the level of data generation within the four walls of the factory as we speak has been extremely limited. When you talk about machines, spewing out process variables at very high frequencies, and the ability to mine that data using, long histories, etc. Even in very mature organizations, this wasn't the case. You had very limited storages. Storages could be anywhere between just 2 hours of process variable data to up to 2 months. Now, with storage costs becoming very, very efficient, with the algorithms around how, the laws of physics and chemistry behave within the plant, all of getting commoditized, we are seeing the cost to deploy such solutions reduce significantly. And that's the single biggest reason, why companies are now in India adopting it in an accelerated manner. The second big reason why adoption has increased in the last couple of years is the cost of the IoT devices has gone down. The cost of hardware and software platforms, which need to be, plonked on all these, equipments, that has gone down significantly. So overall, the TCO has reduced. Where we now see going forward, the biggest challenge for AI in manufacturing is the promise, right? People within, again, operations believe things will turn autonomous and, data will provide me quick insights. And as somebody from the previous panel just spoke, it is an iterative process. You move from a 60% accuracy to 70 and then 73 and so forth, right? So I think we'll have to be just patient before, the true power of AI can be unleashed in manufacturing.
Sure, Akash. And as you rightly said, the shop floor itself is getting revolutionized, which obviously means people are leveraging AI for faster, more accurate processes and analysis. Now, let me shift gears and move to FS here with you, Shomu. Now, FS traditionally has been a sector which was probably the first one to adopt analytics per se, in terms of originations, retention, and those kind of analytics. How do you see things moving last 4-5 years with the advent of AI and high computing in your sector, and what are the key findings or things that you have observations?
Oh, thank you, Vishesh. I hope that you're able to hear me well. One of the things that we are seeing in FS, and especially talk about banking, there are 4 key areas where I see that the FS has adopted AI at scale. Number one is, I think when you talk about any conversational banking, be it chatbot, be it in your web or your mobile app, or even in the social banking, we see a lot of use of AI in NLP and similar use cases to kind of provide almost a human-like conversation experience. The second thing, I think beyond experience, when you talk about the shareholder value through the revenue uplift, we see a lot of the personalization, hyper-personalization, which is using a lot of the AI model to predict and then kind of recommend the right product set for the customers, and a lot of the AI model uses are happening there. And also, I think with the advent of MarTech, how you can make use of, I think AI/ML to have the right communication at the right time in the digital media is also kind of being used by a lot of the organizations at scale. And it is going to only increase as most of the large banks are also thinking about going complete digital and so on and so forth, right? The third thing that I see is on the area of fraud detection. And wherein I think be it network analysis or I think in the sense of I think transaction monitoring, there has been kind of use of AI to how to kind of catch and then remediate some of the actions in the almost a real-time manner. And last but not the least, what you'll see is on driving the operational efficiency, which is using a lot of the RPA in the processing of kind of routine information and so on and so forth. And beyond banking, I think, and some of the NBFCs are doing a kind of better job of, I think, using the AI for kind of using more alternate data to kind of the credit modeling as well, where we see the banks will probably kind of take the leap in the next few years to kind of do much more than what they're doing today. In the insurance, particularly in the general insurance, we see a lot more happening in terms of the entire claims processing and kind of identification of the frauds, so on and so forth, including recognition of an image of our car which has got through an accident, to think about what should be the value of the claims and so on and so forth. In the life, a little slow, but still you see a lot of work happening around how we can actually improve the experience both in terms of claim settlement processing and so on and so forth. So a lot of area on kind of making the process streamlined is going on, and going forward, I think it is only going to increase as you have manifold of data and more data that you can come and create more personalization.
Sure. But mostly AI is also seen as a disruptor within an organization, right? Changing the traditional ways of and challenging a lot of status quos. what are the key challenges that you have seen when organizations go through this journey?
So the organization challenges are basically threefold that we have seen. One is the pure data infrastructure, and a lot of the organizations, and as you know, in India, there are a lot of the large banks which are there, zillions of data, different systems. Many of them are kind of like legacy systems. How we can create the truly, single source of truth from where I think you can actually get all the data to do that. And we see a lot of work happening. And with both the private cloud and public cloud, I think it's probably going to help in that particular direction. The second area that we see is on the organization structure and how the data is, access is given to people, whether it's federated or centralized. Even the data is there, whether people are actually having a democratic, access to it and then use of it. And the third is the organization structure and change management, right? So who is driving this, right? Whether there is enough adoption, if somebody is sitting in, I think a central analytics team or the data team is doing it, but without the right link to the kind of the business problems to be solved, or even kind of with the right, alignment with the business, we see that, I think these models are good on paper, but then, I think people on the ground either don't use it. And one of my, in the earliest discussion, one of the panelists are saying that it may be the change management agenda, it has not been fulfilled properly. So those are the three things that we see, I think a belief in it, B is that right, the architecture to kind of do that, I think all the right good things. And then three is this, and on top of it, of course, the talent, and especially, I think areas like FS and some of those, I think talent is there, but I think not like what you have with some of the kind of the big tech companies.
Sure. And Rajat, what about you? When you look at your sector, what are the key challenges or risks that you see people going through?
So I think that, yeah, like I think Shomu's, what Shomu has alluded to will also be impacting the consumer and retail sectors as well. But some of the areas where we see a big challenge, one is clearly around integration challenges. A lot of companies are just running legacy systems. How do you integrate new AI and other models into that? Because there are lots of costs. Today also they're being bombarded by lots of information on new things coming out. 2 months ago it was Meta, now it's generative AI. Everybody's running for that. So I think there's a lot of confusion with CIOs as well, and Akash and I are involved in a lot of conversations with clients. Clients are saying, let's do data maturity assessment for the business and understand where we are. And by the time we finish the maturity, three new things have emerged as new trends. And then sort of that has a challenge, right? There's also a lot of issues around data bias today because lots of data is being collected, but that, if you don't collect it properly, if it's not arranged in the right way, it creates a lot of data bias in terms of how we are going to leverage that data for further, sort of to be able to use effectively for the business. Then there are lots of security risks today. I don't think companies are really still completely understand what the security risks are. They're collecting lots of data. A lot of the data is sitting in various parts. Even the businesses don't have a single data lake, so it sits in various businesses. And if there's a lot of leakage today, and you see that in our own life experiences, our relationship manager leaves from one bank, joins another, starts calling you from that bank for the same conversation. So lots of data, the risks are very, very high as well. Other point is around, around ethical concerns as well today. How do you make sure that the data that's there is not being, is being ethically used or not being used to, whether it's facial recognition, personal data, also using data on social media to basically, you have instances of bullying and harassing customers. All of that is becoming a very, very important element as well, right? And the last piece is around data, the transparency. A lot of these, the AI networks, especially the neural networks, etc., are quite complex. Companies are not able to understand how to integrate them well, and etc. So I think all of these are potential challenges that the industry is facing. But having said that, there's also a lot of desire to learn and improve and bring that into their day-to-day operations.
Sure. Fair points, I think, both of you, because as we see a lot of people adopting it, I think the need of the hour is also to have a robust risk framework in place, which makes sure that AI is fair, transparent, explainable, and things like that. So I think a lot of our clients, obviously, and organizations are looking forward to that. Akash, which brings me to the fact that AI is a complex endeavor for the organization to undertake. And it has implications in terms of technology, people, and the way of doing work processes. But end of the day, it is an investment decision. How do you see organizations looking at AI from the investment point of view, and what are their expectations from AI as a return, etc., as they invest in this technology?
A great question, Vishesh. Again, there has been a maturity in the last couple of years within the Indian context. Earlier, it was a use case, so you could do a MarTech use case, or you could do a cost to serve use case, and so forth, right? So that's how you did a short 90-day sprint, built up a model, and enabled adoption. I think now we're seeing really the power of data push on cloud that has already happened, and then all these advanced sophisticated models coming in, and the power of the front end and the way it has enabled consumption, all that really coming together. I think people are looking at investment at scale. So whether it's cloud infrastructure at scale, whether it's data collection, and from what we call it in manufacturing, the L0 to L1 layer, right? The instrument which is skewing out the data and how you're collecting it real time. That layer, so automation, digitization of extraction, modeling, and presentation. People are looking at investments at scale, and they are truly looking at how do you create long-term enterprise value. So I think we are past the stage where it's a use case based 180 day sprint decision to how do we get massive data infrastructures in place for our organizations.
Sure. And any observations from I think FS or retail, Rajat?
So I think just same, just to add to Akash's point, there's a real push from the CIO, and the CEO, etc., and CFO saying, what's the ROI on this business? Should we invest in technology? And more we are going to clients and say, let's not put in technology and AI for AI's sake, but let's understand what's the use case for you. How do you make it effective? Do you have the right data set, firstly, to be able to use it? Because if you put in these putting expensive platforms, if they are not generating the requirement, whether it's your the information that the CEO needs, or your dashboards, and we're visualizing all of that, making sense. I think all of that is really important. So a lot of the discussions for us now is, while there's a pushback on ROI, we always say, what's the use case? How do you make it effective? What's your top 3 priorities? Is it the sales? Do we need to enable the sales force better? Do we have is a priority to better engage with shoppers and customers? Is the priority to have better visualization on the manufacturing side? Choose the priorities, choose what will work for you. And then, like Akash is saying, short sprints to develop POCs, and then take it forward from there.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the theme-wise similar. In fact, and I think that's very important to have the right data strategy and analytics strategy in place, because I think ROI will come in, I think, when we invest in the most impactful areas first, and then you kind of go on the other ones. And having a very clear direction on this is very important, and it is not kind of an agenda of one particular function in any organization. It's an organization decision. The second thing is in many of the cases that people are saying that the ROI measurement, the way it is done, probably I think is different or than any other project, because what happens is, to make it really work, we really need to ensure that I think we have the right sort of skill set in the organization, as well as the right set of mindset to adopt these models, right? So I think giving them sufficient time to kind of get a real recommendation around whether to kind of do it, like have an ROI calculation or not, is an important aspect. And the third thing is that I think as we think about the ROI, like as everybody mentioned, that I think starting small, learning first, and then thinking about the more big investment is also a good idea.
Sure. I think that is almost on top of the hour. But before I think there's no conversation can be complete without discussing the latest kid on the block in technology, which is generative AI. And so would love to hear from each of you, how are your sector organizations perceiving it, generative AI, and what are the kind of use cases that you see coming your way in these organizations now in the sector?
So I'll go first. Yeah, I think while it has created a lot of the interest, But having said that, I think how part is still kind of being debated. But as we think about it, as the organizations are thinking about this as a new technology to solve the business problems, and I'll take an example of say an insurance, right? So the more that we see that, okay, it is going to impact the layer which is actually at the customer interaction and the intermediary interaction. So for example, like, when an agent is talking about a product pitch, how that product pitch could be kind of generated by, I think an engine which actually talks about not only a few small bullet points or numbers, but create a kind of coherent script and share that with the kind of client. So we see that, I think more of generative AI use case, maybe it could be in the digital marketing when our personalized recommendation is coming, how exactly you are going to kind of frame that and sharing with the client, that becomes kind of more important, right? So we see that the more use cases in the first, probably in the near future is going to be more on that side, which is the engagement side, a little lesser on kind of the areas like, I think core of the credit underwriting or, so on and so forth.
So thanks. Yeah, Akash.
I think in the case of manufacturing and supply chain, this is a huge promise. Again, it is hungry for vast amounts of data, so it will take some time before which you start getting results which actually are meaningful. But some of the areas are in the area of looping back usage data into product development, right? So you have mass usage of a particular product on the retail shelves or in terms of how you're using it over the life cycle of the equipment. That data can, generate vast amounts of insight into how do you frugalize the design and reduce the cost of manufacturing itself. So that's one clear use case. The other is in the case of product wear and tear. You have so many parameters. The sheer number of combinations which result in a product wearing out over its life cycle are one too many. And just finding out, which factor is sort of playing in the life cycle and causing accelerated wear. Those use cases is something that generative AI could really support in the case of supply chain.
So I think just further to build on what Shomu and Akash have said, like we've seen with Meta, which sort of a lot of the excitement was on B2C, but in the end it's B2B, which is really using it in a big way. Whether you look at large manufacturing, whether you look at large automobile plants being set up, they're using a lot of Meta to basically use that to design and build. So I think here also, I think while consumer will create a lot of the excitement and noise, and 100 million people, sort of, start using chatbots, I mean, especially all kinds of generative AI platforms, my sense is that it may evolve more into a B2B platform. How do you build better products? How do you build, how do you use generative AI for developing, bigger and broader sort of, campaigns, etc. But whether the last mile connectivity to end consumer might still take time, because that sort of trying to get an ROI on that type of stuff always becomes very, very difficult. So maybe a bigger B2B play eventually leading to B2C, similar like what we might see in bigger, in exciting stuff like Meta and all.
So I think fair points, and especially I think what Akash and Rajat, both of you touched on. So one is obviously there's a lot of euphoria initially when a new technology comes, but eventually I think it settles down. And obviously also looking at the use cases where it will create the maximum impact in terms of doing cases which probably were not available to look at earlier, is the one which will give us the return in Gen AI. But nevertheless, they look very promising. To your point, Akash, that a lot of things can change. And it's nice to know that all sectors and organizations are actively looking at exploring these technologies. The jury is still out on certain aspects of the technology, but I think things will mature as we go. Thanks a lot to all three of you for being part of the panel and helping us understand how AI is being looked at and being adopted across your sectors. Whether it takes time to adopt or whether it's revolutionary, I think no one can deny the fact that we are at the cusp of a technology revolution today with the advent of Gen AI and processing power being so cheap. So I think it's going to be really exciting times for all of us and organizations. Thanks again for everyone for joining, and thanks for the panelists to be a part of the panel. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vishesh. Really great session. Thanks everyone for the opportunity.